What's up, everybody? My name is Greg. Welcome to the channel. Today, I wanted to talk about the musician from the 60s, Jimi Hendrix, and some of his spiritual quotes and lyrics. A lot of the musicians of the 60s have a lot of deep spiritual sayings and things that they've said, about uniting people and peace and all that stuff. But in my opinion, from what I've read about Jimi Hendrix, no one has gotten so deep into the spiritual concepts that have come from deep shamanic, let's say religions, if you want to call them religions, deep shamanic religions that have these unbroken connections into prehistory, as the Thunder Wizard would say. And I first started reading these things. I got this book right here, Excuse Me While I Kiss the Sky, The Life of Jimi Hendrix. This is by David Anderson. I must have got this back in the mid '80s sometime. I mean, you can see, look at how beat up it is. I read through it. I read through it so much it cut in half, But so the other day I'm cleaning out my place right here, and I come across this book that I still have, and I've gotten into the Thunder Wizard's teachings about January 2018, and since then, I hadn't read this book since I don't know when the last time I read it, early '90s or something like that. But I started remembering things from the book, and I started recalling that there were certain things that he said in there that were pretty deep, and had these shamanic viewpoints based on the Thunder Wizard path, and a lot of shamanistic practices throughout the world. That he picked up on these things just from being in this world and following his true soul's joy in this life that he led. I really believe that he really wanted to become a musician. He really wanted to live that fast life. Maybe he wanted to burn out. He wanted to burn his energy really quick. He wanted to live and die really fast, because that's what he did. He burned his energy super fast. Whatever, the drugs and the alcohol and all that too. I really think that that's what he wanted to do in this life. He was a very evolved soul, and he wanted to come down here and experience life as a musician. Maybe one last time, maybe not. I don't know, but you can hear it in his music, especially when you hear him live. He's very spontaneously creative in his improvisation. He never played a song the same way twice. I mean, things can be a little bit here sloppy here and there, but to me it doesn't matter. The stuff was very inspirational for me. He's my, as a guitarist myself, he is my biggest influence in music. He has really inspired me to be very spontaneously creative myself when I play. This is something that I would say is kind of lacking in today's music. When you see people play live on TV, sometimes it's hard for me to tell if they're even playing live. This spontaneity and this rawness of music is kind of getting lost out there. It's still out there somewhere, but back then it was really in the forefront of music. But yeah, so I wanted to look inside of and quote some of these sayings that he had that really are pretty deep, and really take consciousness to another level. You really can tell that this guy had a lot of deep understanding about consciousness. So let me see. Right here, I can explain everything better through music. You hypnotize people to where they go right back to their natural state, which is pure positive, like childhood, when you get natural highs. And when you get people at the weakest point, you can preach into the subconscious what we want to say. That's why the name Electric Church flashes in and out. He used to call his music Electric Church music. There's no telling how many lives your spirit will go through, die and be reborn. Like my mind will be back in the days when I was a flying horse. Before I can remember anything, I can remember music, stars, and planets. I could go to sleep and write 15 symphonies. I had very strange feelings that I was here for something, and I was going to get a chance to be heard. I got the guitar together because that was all I had. I used to be very lonely. So, this is a person that he already felt and knew that he'd lived many, many lives. And like he said, the first things like he could remember is music, stars, and planets. These are like the fundamental building blocks of the universe. Stars, the planets, and sound. Those are the foundations of the Big Bang. This life coming in. So it's a trip how comfortable he was with saying these things. Although, you don't hear much of these spiritual explanations coming out nowadays when people quote his interviews. It's more about it's not so deep about these things. This is a song he wrote right in closer towards the end of his life, Room Full of Mirrors. This is some of the lyrics. I used to live in a room full of mirrors. All I could see was me. Then I take my spirit and I smash my mirrors. And now the whole world is here for me to see. Now I'm searching for my love to be. A broken glass was solving my brain, cut and screaming, crowding in my head. A broken glass was loud in my brain. It used to fall on my dreams and cut me in my bed. So, he's talking about what's going on once you start pursuing your soul's greatest joy. You start to realize that everything around you is a reflection of yourself. He's talking about, I used to live in a room full of mirrors. All I could see was me. This is probably before he really discovered who he was and what he really was meant to do. He's talking about it in more of that negative way, where you see the reflection of yourself in people. And then once you start really pursuing your soul's greatest joy, you shatter that old mirror of your old self. And then, you have a fresh perspective of the world. You switch those timelines, you go into another state of consciousness. Now you're looking at everything and feeling the earth in a different light. It's like you're on literally a different timeline, on a different earth. Your whole past is not reverberating back into your present moment. You've overcome those things. Now you're really on your right path. And what happens when you do that is you deal with your unconscious. Your unconscious still starts to surface. And when you're around other people who are not really on that level that you are, they feel it when they're around you. They can't really, or they're not willing to climb up to that same level of consciousness that you're at. And they feel that that how can they distract themselves from that, and they start judging you. These are your friends or your family or anybody, just going around town, people start putting out that bad vibe towards you. But you have to realize that it's on them, it's not you. You have nothing to do with other people. It's how you feel and how you react to how they're reacting to you. You can always take a negative and turn it into a positive. You can look at them and realize that, oh, well, they're in a greater fear than I am. I'm progressing towards this level of bringing my soul's greatest joy into this life, and maybe they don't want to, but that's all right. I can still use this as an energy booster for me to stay focused on my right path. And as he says, the broken glass was loud in my brain. It used to fall in my dreams and cut me in my bed. So that's the subconscious. It surfaces too in our dreams as well. Whether it comes out in our present day consciousness or in our unconscious, it always comes out. So it's something that we're always having to deal with. It's always there. We're always going to be dealing with that, the unconscious, because the unconscious is always wanting to service, and it thinks it knows what's right for us. We have to get it under our control, which we can do. So let me go somewhere else over here. There's a great need for harmony between man and earth. I think we're really screwing up that harmony by dumping garbage in the sea, air pollution, and all that stuff. And the sun is very important. It's what keeps everything alive. So that was just a little quote about what's going on in the world, still going on today. That's definitely going on still today. This one's pretty trippy. I remember this one. There's no whole lot of religions, just one link, because there's only a few chosen people that supposedly are to get this across. These chosen people in the process are now being distracted and they are drowning themselves. In order to properly save them, they got to take a break from people. So, again, he's talking about this whole pursuing your soul's greatest joy. When you do that, people in your life that knew who you were before you started going on the proper path, they're going to be distractions in your life at times. They can really start to be a more positive impact in your life too, as well. Or the relationships reach a karmic ending, where it's time to go our separate ways. They'll go out of your life. If they're not willing to, boost themselves up to your level, then, they're not, if they're not healthy for you, you got to let them go. You got to go out, And this is how he's saying, these people who are bringing this whole thought, this whole view about being chosen people that are supposedly to get this point across about there's only one link to consciousness. It's not about religions. They're drowning themselves out. They're feeling that tug between being what society wants them to be, what family wants them to be, and then really pursuing their soul's greatest joy. Or at least that's the way I see it now that I'm reading this stuff. I mean, it could be interpreted as that now that I'm on this. I'm progressing more towards a higher level within my own self. Let's see. Let me go to some more. Yeah, I started sifting through this book and checking out all of these, remembering these sayings that he had. This is something that he wrote down. Forget of my name. Remember, it's only a handshake. Introduction to my belief, which is God. Ride instead the waves of my interpreter. Music, sound, hypnotic if you choose. But truth and life, regardless of your questionable, timid compromises, which I intend to erase, which I will erase without hint of reward, as I am only a messenger, and you a sheep in process of evolution, almost at death with yourself and on the staircase of birth. Soon you may almost forget the smell of your family. So, again, he's talking about the same thing. Once you start, you got to die to yourself. When you're pursuing your soul's greatest joy, you're going to bump into your unconscious. You're going to bump into all those energies, those memories, those things you don't need. You got to weed them out. You got to die. To be reborn again, you have to die. That's what he's talking about right here. And he's talking, you might forget the smell of your own family. You're going to forget, you're not going to draw from your past no more. Your past is not going to influence you. You're going to overcome it. You're going to balance out that karma in your life. That's the way I see what he's saying right there. And let's see, there's some more here, a few more. But I just find it interesting that he goes so deep like this. This one right here. There are a lot of things you have to sacrifice. It all depends on how deep you want to get into whatever your gig is, whatever you're there for. So like the deeper you get into it, the more sacrifices you have to do, maybe even on your personality or your outward this and that. I just dedicate my whole life to this whole art. You have to forget about what other people say. If it's art or anything else, whatever you really, really dig doing, you have to forget about what people say about you sometimes. Forget about this or forget about that. When you're supposed to die or when you're supposed to be living. You have to forget about all these things. You have to go on and be crazy. That's what they call craziness. Craziness is like heaven. Once you reach the point of where you don't give a damn about what everybody else is saying, you're going toward heaven. The more you get into it, they're going to say, damn, that cat's really flipped out. Oh, he's gone now. But if you're producing and creating, you're getting closer to your own heaven. That's what man's trying to get to anyway. So again, he's talking about the same thing, pursuing your own goals. Other people are going to start judging you and thinking something's wrong with you. You're on this different level. Like, what is up with that dude? But you got to reach that point where you just don't care about what other people are saying and you still keep going. You go towards your own heaven. That's what it's all about, as he's saying, we're trying to get closer to our own evolution. Well, he says our own heaven. That's what man's trying to do anyway. So it's brilliant stuff. The guy only lived to be 27, but he had these true spiritual teachings that he intuited from the universe. Here's some more. Once you have the bottom, or wait a minute, right here, that's what I believe. Once you have some type of rhythm, this is where he's talking about, okay. Once you have some type of rhythm, like it can get hypnotic. If you keep repeating it over and over, most of the people will fall off about a minute of repeating. You do that, say, for 3, 4, or even 5 minutes if you can stand it. And then it releases a certain thing inside of a person's head. It releases a certain thing in there, so you can put anything you want right inside that. So you do that for a minute, and all of a sudden you can bring the rhythm down a little bit, and then you say what you want to say right into that little gap. It's something to ride with. You have to ride with something. I always like to take people on trips. So he's talking about the power of music right there. When you get into these hypnotic, repetitive rhythms, it can really start to open you up. You can feel your chakras starting to open up. You feel things, you feel open, like you're vulnerable. You get into that childlike state where you're just energy, you're pure energy, you're primal energy. And like he said, he feeds things into people. Once he senses people are open, he feeds into them positive, sayings, positive knowledge into it, where he's trying to affect people on that deep subconscious level. And this one right here this is the deepest one that I found right here. So he, the night before he died, well, actually the afternoon before he died, he's hanging out with his girlfriend that he was with that night. And let's see, where am I at? He was with his girlfriend Monica Danneman in the garden of the Samarkand Hotel. He seemed rushed, yet very much into communicating several things to her at once. On her drawing pad, he drew nine times, each 9 inside the other, flowing out like a nova. It looked a little bit like an Egyptian eye or a medieval sun. He talked of 9 consciousness as being the highest form of the intelligences. He then placed the drawings of the 9 concentric nines against a reproduction of the solar system, and talked about the radiation of the 9 consciousness throughout the Milky Way. The 2 luminaries and the 7 planets collectively were 9 consciousness. Within the secrets of numbers were insights into the grand design. Monica found it difficult to grasp the meaning of the figures and symbols, but Jimmy pressed on, urging her to remember it all. Remember all he said, even if she did not understand at the moment. So this is the night before he died. He put out that perception about the 9. The 9 consciousness. In the Thunder Wizard path, we have the 9 worlds, and there is the 9 planets too in Vedic astrology. I think he might have been talking about Western astrology though, right here when he talks about the 9 consciousness, the 2 luminaries and the 7 planets. I think he was talking about like Uranus and Pluto, the 2 luminaries being the sun and the moon. But from my perspective, he still could have been intuiting the proper knowledge though. Maybe he wasn't aware of that Vedic astrology, but still, this can still be applied to that. Because he picked up on it anyway. He might not have been exact, but Vedic astrology is more precise. Vedic astrology is the actual stars that are right above your head at the time you were born. The Western astrology is off. It's off by 24 degrees, something like that. But he was picking up on this, about the 9 consciousness, the 9 planets, and it was very important to the intelligence. It's a trip. I never heard these sayings except for in this book about these deep spiritual quotes of Jimi Hendrix. So it's I just find it very interesting that he had these intuitions, and this is what happens when you pursue your soul's greatest joy. He was a very evolved soul. I believe that he had lived many lifetimes, and he probably still had to live more. But in that life, he chose to live it really quick. He chose to be a rock musician and live that fast life. He wanted to enjoy. He wanted to burn his energy really quick, and he was not afraid of death. He was already comfortable with it. He knew that he had been around many times before, and he'll still will be around after this life. So he had no fear of that. And like he said, if people thought he was crazy, he didn't even care. He still kept pursuing his soul's greatest joy, and nothing stopped him. And he was able to pick up on this awareness of the universe, these true spiritual foundational laws of the universe that are going on within consciousness. We all have access to that, and we can all feel them. And he may not have been practicing these spiritual rituals, but somehow he picked up on them. He was very deep with that. And you can pick up on them too. There's a bunch of avenues towards picking up on finding our soul's greatest joy, or finding what really we vibrate to. There are many paths. There might be just one path for you. There might be a number of paths. For me, it's Vedic astrology, it's Qigong, it's doing ritual, it's playing music. For other people, it can be other things. It's also for me animal totems. That's a big thing for me too. But whatever it is, you got to find it, and you got to pursue it, and you got to really use it to help evolve you. And I give Thunder astrology readings and 12 house readings based on Vedic astrology, which, as I said, it's the stars right above your head. If anybody's interested in getting a reading, go to www.greg.thunderwizard.com. And that's about it. Yeah. follow your soul's greatest joy. Don't let nothing stop you. Peace.